Ralf, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, it's wonderful to have you here. It's our honor. So first off, you really need no introduction, but for the benefit of the crowd, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Ralf. I am originally the founder of SK Gaming, so I used to play video games competitively before there was a term esports, so that's 1997 or something like this, so you know, a few decades ago. And moved on from that to actually, because there was no infrastructure to compete in, to build sports leagues, right? And that became ESL, which we sold a year and a half ago to Savvy Games Group.
Congratulations.
Big investment arm from Saudi Arabia to go into games. And now I'm chairman, so I'm lazy and, you know, not operationally anymore. Smart ass on the side.
No. I mean, you have all the wisdom of having built this business.
I can pretend at least.
Okay, fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your interest in Web3, because obviously you've been in gaming for a very long time. When you look at Web3, what are some of the opportunities you see there?
It's so many, so it's a little bit hard to prioritize. But I mean, I'll start with the thing that probably, you know, I at least believe most in. That's you know, digital ownership. Okay. Playing video games has been all about a digital identity, right? We've done what people did in COVID 30 years ago or 25 years ago. That means we built virtual companies with people over IRC chat, and we've never met them, but became friends. But there was no digital infrastructure actually to any sort of ownership. Even send, you know, traditional money was really hard. So I'm a strong believer. I have two kids, 9 and 12. That you know, your sword in whatever game it is more valuable probably than the real sword you have, unless you know the zombie apocalypse is going to come. Then that's going to turn around. But you know that has very low probability. So digital ownership, digital assets is what it revolves around. That is for me the core use case, and probably everything else just a little bit less relevant and is more a tool, but it's really, that is a purpose, I guess.
Yeah. When I encounter gamers, obviously there are the gamers who, you know, you play games for entertainment, for fun and escape, and then there are people who do it competitively. And oftentimes I find that the people who do it competitively, obviously they care more about the business aspect of it and the monetization aspect of it. Is that something that you see as well, or does everyone across the board feel that digital ownership of their in-game assets is really a right? I don't think it's correct to put it in these two groups. I'm sure there's different archetypes, a little bit to what you say, right? There's the killer and the vanity person, and so on and so forth. So there's different reasons, but I don't think it's just two. It's much more. And because this is your it's so close to your digital identity. Right? If you're the competitive archetype, it's a different use case than if you're the arty type. But in the end of the day, it's all about expressing yourself, and that might look flashy and fast or pink and colorful. Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about a game that is compelling to put as the subject matter of a tournament, is there really a difference between a Web3 game and a Web2 game that would appeal to audiences, or not really?
I don't think that it's a difference in, let's call it Web2 or Web3, but it's a lot in game design, right? I mean, competitive games are, you know, there's this buzzword, it's easy to learn, hard to master. Evergreen titles, right? If you look at RTS as a segment, the best thing that ever happened in real-time strategy games is undoubtedly StarCraft. At the same time, it's a worst thing that happened because no other game after that could actually get critical mass because it was so perfect. RTS are hard, and they're, you know, not team games by default. That has a lot of community disadvantages, I'd argue. But it has perfectionized this so deeply and so much that we're still waiting for the next big RTS, and that might never come. So again, I'm looking more at this from a game design perspective, but which is with every new technology, you argue, is that what are the distinct advantages of digital ownership and all the other aspects of Web3 that you can use in a game to make it, to differentiate it actually from all the other games. And that is very early days, right? That is usually takes, with every new, let's call it platform, with every new disruption, somewhere between 7 and 15 years, you could argue, right? Even if you think about the first iPhone came out 2007, and it probably took until 2014 for real, for touch screen games to have a distinct own game design, and so on and so forth. And you can basically extrapolate that from everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think we take the same tack at Saga, and most of the other protocols that look at Web3 gaming, it's the same feeling, which is that the best thing that we can do right now is make it as easy as possible for developers to develop so that they can freely experiment.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that, I mean, I think I know the answer to this question, but just to ask it, one of the things that Web3 degens really love to do, because we're nerds, is we love to follow the saga, if you will, of financial transactions, right? So if something is happening in the markets and then certain people are like pulling off some, pretty crazy financial engineering feats, people actually like talk about that as though it were a game and you're enjoying watching this game. Do you think that that will ever be something that is a component of tournaments that feature Web3 games, or will people be sort of like bored by that kind of thing?
I think there's different aspects. There is, and it's every sport actually. If we go one level psychologically deeper, there is the athletes who love to have it as little random as much skill as possible. You know the Magnus Carlsen story?
No, go for it.
Okay, and he's a good example, right? He stopped playing the World Championship in chess, which is a video game after all, right? So a simple one, but not a bad one. And he basically stopped because it's only 12 games. Okay. It's not enough sample size to find out who's the best player in the world.
All right.
That's his argument.
Okay. He's got a little tired.
And the best player in almost every game will say, I need higher sample size. I need less random. We want to find out who's the best, while the spectator is looking for, he wants to find the best player, that's okay, but he wants to be entertained at the same time.
Exactly.
Well, the play itself is not so much about entertainment. So I believe that any meta game on financial whatever has an impact. The minute that the player thinks we're not finding the best player anymore. So as it gets decoupled from skill, it's a problem. If it's part of the skill, which you have in almost every game, right? A meta game, which can have direct financial or in-game financial component, it's fine. So as long as it's connected and kind of under the control of the players or under the impact of the players, it's okay. If it gets disconnected, it's a different thing. I'm not here to say that it can't work, but it will lose credibility with your best athletes. And therefore probably lose credibility with the community. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a ton of sense. No, that's fantastic. I haven't heard it broken down that way before, but that makes a ton of sense. So one of the big themes of this event, and I think it's top of mind for any Web3 gaming project or protocol out there, is user acquisition. And so, you have to get to a certain point before a tournament makes sense. But in terms of whipping up that competitive fever around your game, what advice would you have to Web3 games that have that kind of ambition?
It's a good question. So, I mean, it's always a question where you start, right? And I think a little bit of the mistake of the very early Web3 games, or at least the hype cycle of the games, was that you came with the financial model and not with the gameplay.
That's right.
That rarely works, right? You always need to come from the consumer, from the result, and that's fun. And actually, it's the same problem. Every game that has been designed so far as being a competitive platform or the competitive game has actually not really worked. It's the other way around. You build something that's super fun, that's super engaging, and then it becomes an esport. Not the other way around. It needs some ingredients and some technical ones, right? You need custom servers to, like a pitch actually to play, and you can manage that, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't work the other way around. And I think for Web3, it's the same, right? You need an engaging, fun gameplay that then utilizes the advantages. And I mean, if you look at Counter-Strike, let's stick with that. It is very close to Web3 from its feature set. It has weapons you can find. You can sell them, right? It's not a free market. It's a closed market. But it's one of the very few games that allows selling digital items at all. And it focused on being the best 5 versus 5 shooters. It never tried to be anything else. And then it built an economy around it, a closed one, but and a small one and a very focused one. There's not many things you can get. And that has exploded over time. It's been nurtured over, I think they introduced the skins in 2012 or so. So over 10, 11 years now. And I don't know the numbers, but it's a few $100 million market. And just with the last esports tournament that was around there, which is an amplifier actually for the digital economy. I think they said that they paid to teams last year, that's a public figure, almost $80 million.
Oh my God.
And you can assume that's below 25% of what they made on those items, probably below 30. I don't know the number, to be honest, but it's my guess that it's 25-ish%. So just on those specific esports connected, it's not items actually, it's stickers and cosmetics and things like this. They probably made a few $100 million. And that is, you know, it's funny that it's not so talked about, but it's by far the biggest success factor. And the numbers I know is that for the last tournament, which happened this May, probably they grew by another 50%. It took them many, many years to nurture this ecosystem, to create expectation. This happens twice a year. It's a scarce resource. You guys all know about it. But then it becomes a true market and a true collectible and something that that people invest in. And I mean, the most expensive items trade for a few $100,000 these days. And that's not one outlier, right? Because there's one whale who, you know, did it. It's happening every day. Oh my goodness. So the liquidity is there. That's
The liquidity is there. The liquidity is there.
But it's based on a great game, right? It's based on a great game that's growing and is continuing to engage players.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where Web3 gaming, you know, it's a blessing and a curse that the industry moves so quickly in Web3, because what that means is honestly a lot of the key players that you hear about maybe a year or 2 years ago, they sort of either die off, or in most instances they launch a token and then lose interest. And so they're not there to continue to foster that community. But I think it's a great reminder that even for some of the best games out there, it takes many, many years.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's very few overnight successes. But even those are mostly on game design. And if you look at Fortnite, which has been arguably the biggest game of the last 6-7 years, it's a copycat. Copycat of PUBG, right? They had an existing world. Someone, Brandon Green, invented the greatest gameplay of the last decade, and they just put it on their in their world. And it was a little bit the youth version of it. Same actually with League of Legends and Dota. You could argue that League of Legends is the younger version of Dota, and it became the biggest game in the world at that time. So it's always based on crazy good gameplay and then iteration. And none of these games started as great games, actually. All of them started as a great game design, but pretty shitty execution. And then got optimized and optimized and optimized.
Oftentimes with Web3 games, because the user base is so small, this is true for a lot of products, when you have a smaller user base to start with, you actually don't get that important, like, critical mass of feedback that you need in order to improve for the next iteration. And so for Web3 games, I think because there are so few players, oftentimes they don't have enough people play testing to let them know, okay, you know, these are all the aspects of the game that need to improve. So just a small question is how do you start to drum that up? How do you,
Well, it's interesting. Like 20 years ago, everyone would say PC gaming is dead because the barrier to entry is so high. And if you think about it, it's still pretty high. You need to spend at least $1,500. You need to set up this PC, which is complex.
Yeah.
You need to hook it up to the internet. You need to download Steam or some other distribution platform. So every game on a PC is 100 clicks away.
Yeah.
While on your PlayStation, it's literally 2 clicks away, right?
So
the hypothesis back then from actually the whole games industry was, or almost the whole, no, not us obviously, was, PC gaming is dead and console will take over.
Yeah.
History has told us it's not.
Right.
If something is truly engaging and truly amazing, people will jump through hundreds of hoops to get there. So as much as I believe on, which is probably the whole theme, we need to make it easier to enter Web3, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I would actually approach it from the opposite perspective because probably 75% of the room, if not 90%, are trying to make it easier.
Yeah.
I would try to make the best game, then people will actually come and try it.
Fascinating, yeah.
Because history has shown this over and over again. If something is really compelling, really amazing, people will go extra mile to get to it.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with that. So, small anecdote is earlier this year I was at GamesBeat in LA, and I was asking around some, gaming OGs, not Web3 gaming, but gaming OGs. Was there any Web3 game that you actually really enjoyed playing last year? And it was surprising to me and to everyone else because it was a game that none of us had heard about. It's called thebeacon.gg. Feel free to look it up. The game is still alive, but the founders ran out of levels. They ran out of content. UGC, if anyone is looking to contribute to this game, I think they'd be more than appreciative. But when you look at the game, if you look it up, you'll see that the artwork, it looks like an Atari game. It looks like,
it's pixely.
Yeah, it's completely pixelated. And you do have to hook up your MetaMask in order to play it. And so for a lot of those of us in Web3 who focus on user experience, already that's a red flag, right? That you have to jump through this hoop in order to play this game. But on its debut, the game made $2 million per month on average, which is not bad. It's not bad,
great.
Right? That's great.
I assume the development of that pixel game wasn't too complex.
Yeah,
either,
it wasn't
right?
too
it's
complex.
Just an original idea.
Exactly. And so everyone said, it's just fun. It was a fun game. Yeah. It was a fun game. It was simple, easy to learn. I mean, you have 5-10 minutes a day, you devote yourself to that game. So it's fascinating because I do think this is a point that gets lost among all of us in Web3 scrambling to keep our startups alive because we're building a great new product is sometimes you just need a great game. Yeah.
I would argue all the time, but I agree. Yeah. Right? But don't get me wrong, right? It's never just one thing, right? To make it easier is a good idea. So to stay with the PC analogy, I wouldn't want to start my games via DOS prompt and connect to the internet first manually. So that would be a few too many hoops to stay off. So it's a balance between both.
Yeah.
But again, it's if you have a genuinely genius game idea, people will come.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big themes of this summit is, there's Web3 gaming, obviously, and it has certain, I guess, technological aspects or certain design aspects that are particular to Web3, but we all live in gaming. And so we have to be aware of the wider gaming trends that are happening, including UGC and Multiverse. Now, within esports, obviously, it's an industry that's undergoing its own change. So how are you seeing that trending? Is it something that just can it keep growing and growing, or are you seeing
look, we started 20-something years ago.
Yeah.
Kind of naively believing, yes, this is going to be the sport of the 21st century.
Yeah.
We learned a lot on that way, and I'm the total belief that it's going to be the biggest sport in the world. The only question is when. I don't know, 15 years, 20, 25.
Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't really matter. But it's inevitably going to happen, and I can, my kids are just 2, but it's right in front of me. Like it was right in front of me back when I was at that, not at that age, but young. So from an ambition perspective, it's grand, it's big, and it's continuing to grow well.
Yeah.
And you all know this. What's the difference, though, is that monetization of content is very different than in the old days.
Right.
And the traditional sports industry is feeling the heat and starting to feel the heat.
Yeah.
So the model that you just have more games and ESPN's going to pay more.
Yeah.
That's not going to continue. And unfortunately, digital content distribution is not contributing a lot there. So actually the answer to the monetization of that sport, right?
Yeah.
Because, revenue follows relevance. There is always a way to make money if you have enough airtime.
Right.
Actually, Web3 can play an incredibly important role. Microtransaction of games in the first place, the reselling, all the collectible stuff. It was a little bit overhyped. Now it's underhyped. I'm a big believer in it. It always worked. It will work in the future. It needs to be, the product needs to be good enough, and so on and so forth. But yes, I'm a strong believer that Web3 will around gaming and specifically esports will be one of the most important, if not the most important, monetization methods and tools, all based on great games and great competitions. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So one thing that I'm curious about, to that point of monetization, because that will always remain a very big part of Web3, is in sport and in esports as well, there is a training regimen. And so you can start, cold at, I don't know, call it random age 25 or whatnot, but a lot of people go a lot younger than that, right? And they start to train, get better. What happens when there's a financial component to it? So as you get younger and younger, and the thing is, for your kids, for my little cousins, they understand how to trade Fortnite skins. This is something that they grew up with. But how do you feel about that really becoming formalized as people realize more and more that there's some serious money there?
Good question. I've never thought about it. Technically, it's again no different than it used to be with collectible cards or actually stamps.
Yeah.
Right? There was no lottery style, randomized ones.
Right.
Although the most valuable ones were actually ones with the mistakes on it, right? So anyway, long story short, we live in a world where you have access to every content in the world and every digital transaction. So I assume, and for example, my kids got their digital credit cards just the other week, right?
Oh, wow.
I got them.
Get
because
ready.
It's my job to educate them, and it's all debit ones, right?
Okay,
so they have the money they have.
Yeah.
But why shouldn't kids learn like we've learned? Here's your how's it called? German Sparschwein. It's where as a kid you collect your money, right?
Yeah.
Where you that device.
Oh, piggy bank.
Yes. So that's how we grew up, and that's how they grew up, just with a digital wallet. They have their digital wallet. I actually manage it. So,
okay.
Right? It's
centralized control.
Yes, it is. But I thought that it's my duty, or our duty as parents, to have them learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So they can spend their money like I could with my piggy bank. So I'm sure regulators will think very differently, and there's going to be tons of bullshit being pushed across us. But I, as a parent, think it's my duty to manage and educate the kids.
Yeah.
And good, if they're those 14 genius millionaires by trading skins, then they probably have learned something for life. So I see this as an opportunity rather than a risk.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's a very open-minded view, and I agree with that. We always say that, honestly, we love all of the innovators that are building on Saga, but we anticipate that in much the same way that it's really a new generation that figured out, for example, the TikTok video, what is the short form video that's really going to go viral. I do think it's probably going to be someone under 20 who's going to figure out what does the next great Web3 game look like? What is the one that's actually going to click and then, be multiplied and copied and whatnot. So very hopeful for that generation. As you see more and more people really, click into this in the same way that, kids play sport, regardless of whether they plan to go professional or not.
Yep.
In the same way, do you see that, that esports is going to become so prolific and so full-featured, really, that you kind of had that same dynamic? So like there are junior leagues, for instance, or Well,
it's interesting. There is sports historically have been had tons of logistical challenges.
Yeah.
To play American football, I don't know, you need a few hundred people,
field,
right?
Yeah.
But let's stay with soccer here, right?
Yeah.
The real football.
Yeah.
You need,
right.
you know, at one point in time, at one place, probably at least 26 people.
Yeah.
You know, just mathematically figure out how many things can go wrong. It's an absolute miracle that this happens at scale.
Yeah.
What we can see is that the matchmaking, the very lowest non-organized way to play, is such a good experience most of the time.
Yeah.
That actually that middle layer of, let's call it the junior leagues, right? The pro leagues, it works when people start to watch.
Sure.
And the very, very, very bottom grassroots, everything in between. It's a challenge at scale. No one has figured this out. We haven't figured this out as ESL. We actually, when the scene was much smaller in 2003, 4, 5, we had, you know, a few million people competing in those junior leagues. The easy matchmaking has a little bit killed that middle layer, so to speak. I wish it would work. I wish there was this platform where you can compare it.
Yeah.
But reality is there is not. All these online matchmaking communities, including Faceit, which ESL merged with, that's by far the largest. That's only a few million players at this point.
Yeah.
Long story short, I think there's a very clear value proposition on the top.
Yeah.
There's a very clear value proposition at the bottom.
Yeah.
And in the middle, it's still rough and it's still not figured out. So I believe there's an answer, but I don't know it.
Got it. Well,
at scale, right? I mean, I'm talking millions of people for tens of millions. For a few million people, yes, there is that layer.
Yeah.
But that's probably a little bit higher up, almost right below the pro level.
Yeah.
But for everything below that, there is no solution right now.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know if Web3 technology is something that can actually help solve that, but I think it's probably just a structural issue.
Well, the question is a little bit, you know, digital identity, how much of a opportunity is. I'm a big believer there as well. There hasn't been any good product. Sometimes, you know, sometimes there's a problem that looks for a solution, and sometimes you have the solution and don't find the problem.
That's right.
Anyway, so I don't know if that's mass market ever. I actually believe it. I'm not the one who will solve this problem, but I would not say don't try it.
Yeah. Well, as we're coming to the very end of this last question from me, which is. One of the dynamics that we see with respect to gaming studios or big entertainment studios is they look at Web3 and they saw the profit opportunity with respect to collectibles and NFTs to start with. You know, selling those digital assets was an easier concept for them to understand. But I think once you start to get to more decentralization, so UGC, things that slip out of your control when you really go Web3 native, those things make people nervous. Now, for something like esports, I mean, obviously you have these massive sponsors who expect returns based on their direct investment. How do you see sort of the dialogue with them about sort of letting go of control a little bit?
It's interesting. I think even in esports, to go a little bit back to what you said, it took publishers many, many years to start to understand the principle that you either can be a platform or a product, right? So you either let go or, you control it end to end.
Right.
And I find it fascinating that it took so long. And again, Valve was very early because with Steam, they've been a distribution platform. They have it in their DNA.
Yeah.
They let go easily. You go on. Don't mess it up, but you go on.
Yeah.
Everyone else took longer, but I was a strong believer that this is the better model.
Yeah.
So, I mean, doesn't mean everything is going to be, platform.
Yeah.
But it's a dominant play, and I think that's going to happen, and it's happening across many publishers.
Yeah.
And with sponsors, it's a little bit the same. You're living in a super fragmented, media world, so to speak.
Yeah.
and you need to trust your messaging to survive the community.
Right. That's a great way to put it.
But that's your only chance, right? So what that means, actually, you need to have much better messaging than you used to, and you probably have to find a good balance between being bold.
Right.
/ interesting, but being careful / not stupid. But that is why you hopefully have a great marketing team as a big company.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. Okay, so that was the last question from me, but it's a fireside chat. So is there anything that you would like to offer to the group? Or any question you'd like to turn around to me? That's a possibility.
No, look, I think, looking from, what is the value for a video game actually of esports, right? Because, I mean, you can say, okay, it's cool, it's fun, but, what does it bring to me? But I think the largest long-living video games in the world, and actually, if you think about it, the Axis and so on and so forth, they all have this competitive component.
Yeah.
Because it has a network effect of other people, bringing it into the game. They are, after all, your biggest retention methodology for the players. And if it gets at scale, as well, a large marketing opportunity / user generated.
Right.
But that is, it's the end of the cycle. It's not the beginning.
Yeah.
You never begin user acquisition successfully because you're in esports. I think that is, for me, the biggest learning of the past. And then obviously, from a pure economical perspective, once you have a functioning ecosystem, your Counter-Strike is developed by, I think, less than 20 people.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know, it's probably $1 billion business a year.
Sure.
So once you hit that sweet spot and you have that is a great thing, that you don't need to create new content all the time. You just need to make sure that the game progresses, develops a little bit, but doesn't change too much at the same time.
Right.
Have that sweet spot between those two things and build an evergreen. And I think it's rare. It only happens once a decade or so.
Yeah.
But it's one of the most fascinating things in our industry.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we're all chasing that whale. Right? We would all love to be Counter-Strike. But no, in the meantime, we're having a lot of fun experimenting. And Ralf, thank you so much for spending time with me.
Thank you for having me.
I think this is wonderful. All right, please join me in welcoming Ralf to the summit, thanking him for his time here. Really wonderful insights. It's great to have you.
Thank you, and good luck with all the games.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.